Peace and blessings to you. My name is Jere B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. And I say it all the time when we get involved with these incredible conversations. So is that brother who's sitting to the left of your screen. He's joining us from Cambridge, England, or about 36 miles outside of Cambridge. And he is an incredible EntreMusician. He is a composer for film and TV. If you looked at his LinkedIn resume, you know you were talking to someone of note, of royalty, and he's going to teach us a lot of lessons about being an EntreMusician today. His name is Anthony Nottingham, but he says Ant. So we're going to call him Ant Nottingham, and we're going to find out about his moniker, Dark Villager. So we're going to have a lot of wonderful roads that we're going to walk down today on the EntreMusician. Ant, what's happening, brother? How are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, all good. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Yeah, I hope I can live up to some of that. Yeah, I'm good. And how's it there? How are you?
Yeah, so it's Sunday afternoon for you over there in England. And
3 o'clock here.
Yeah, here in the States is mid-morning. Yet, you know, I've had some things to do prior, so I haven't had my morning cup of coffee yet. Are you a coffee drinker? Yeah.
Got mine here. Yeah, I won't do it. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I like the coffee. I can't work without the coffee. Yeah, it's part of the job.
I don't consider having great conversations like this work, so I haven't yet started. The editing process, though, that's to come this afternoon, is gonna keep me on point. But I tell you what, man, it's really very cool as we hooked up on LinkedIn to see the type of work that you are immersed in. You have a classical background in music. I don't know if that started, you know, from childhood. I want to hear a little bit about that. I don't know what DAW that is sitting back there. That's not, what DAW is that behind you that you're
using? Reaper most of the time. Reaper, yeah.
I want to talk about some software too, because we use some of the same things. I noted that, and so we'll go into that as well. But tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so you're right. I grew up in a musical family, so my parents were both musical. My mum was church organist in the area for most of her adult life. My dad was in jazz bands, played the clubs around London when he was younger.
What instrument were you playing in these? Were you just on one instrument, or you were, you know?
Me, so yeah, I was taught piano and violin when I was younger. I took them all the way up to sort of music college level. Yeah, so my main instrument really is violin, or was. I mean, I still play them, but it's not my professional career. So violin was the one I was trained mostly classical in, and then piano kind of alongside it, because it's great to have piano with your main instrument. And also later in life, I self-taught guitar really. Joined bands when I was at uni and did some gigs around and things like that, several bands really. Yeah. Played in a few orchestras and that when I was, again, in my younger days, up to about 22, I suppose. Yeah. And sort of I got into recording technology and things when I was doing my, what you call A-levels here, when you're 17, 18. Yeah. They had a lot of early tech stuff. So it was just becoming digital. We had Atari STs, we had some synths, we had the Kawai K1 keyboard and Roland drum machines, bits and pieces like that. And that's what really got me into recording.
There's a K1 too right here.
Slowly took over, yeah.
There's a K1 too right here, Kawai.
Ah, there you go. Right. Yeah, they were great keyboards for the day and still usable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we only touched the basics of them when we were doing it. I just used the sounds. We haven't even worked out how to do quantizing on the software. So we were just playing in, like, we hadn't worked out you could quantize it, because I'd only been doing tech for a year or two, and it was all new back then.
Right.
And about a year after we'd left there, we go, oh, there's a quantize button. So we were doing all this disco music and trying to play it in perfectly in time, and hadn't realised you could quantize it. And that's in the days when you couldn't record audio on your DAW. It was only MIDI.
That is correct. That is correct. I can remember, you know, back in the early, this is 1991, 92, and we had a Tascam 688, and we synced it to the MMT8. Who made that? Elisa's made the MMT8. And we would have 8 tracks on a cassette, but the 8th track we would record what's called the FSK code, little time code. And I was dreaming of the day back in that time of where the marriage of MIDI and audio would finally join, and that what a great day of celebration that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, what happened after that, I went to uni and did it was one of the first courses in this country anyway that did music technology.
Yeah.
So we learned all about studio engineering and sound recording, and we ended up, so that's when exactly what you were talking about, we had your time code track, and we had 8 track, 16 track maybe, reel-to-reel Tascams, with an element of digital on them. It had a digital screen you could forward to certain points, but it was basically analog still.
Yeah.
So that's really when it all just began, and we learned like syncing audio to video cassette tape in those days.
Right.
Yeah, it's all good fun. Learned a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you seem like a person who enjoyed the entire journey, whether you were playing violin or piano, whether you were doing classical or jazz, whether you were recording. So you have been that all-around EntreMusician.
It's just the way the path goes, really, and I had to adapt. I mean, I think obviously from what I just said, my interests were at uni and school. Yeah. I was really interested in becoming a producer. I mean, I had dreams at that time of being a studio engineer or something like that.
Right.
I did a little bit of sort of studio assisting, bit video editing, things like that, but it just didn't go in that path. So I ended up most of my career being a teacher. So I've been a music teacher as a professional until recently, really.
Uh-huh.
So, but having said that, all the way along through being a teacher, I've been recording at home still, and the way things have happened in the last year or two, I'm back into focusing on that producing and recording, creating, composing path, which is where I'm at now.
So what got you into the Sync Academy and writing for film and TV? You've had placements in Cake Alike and Say Yes to the Dress, and what was that journey like for you?
Well, I'm just like, it's really been, what is it now? So it was middle of last year. I was in the Sync Academy, did a few months in that and learned loads of things. If anybody wants to learn about how the industry works and how to approach it, I recommend it.
Yeah.
There are other ones, so I'm not just saying that one, but that's the one I did, and it is really good. And Jesse, the guy who runs it, is really awesome. He helps a lot, and pretty much everything he says I agreed with, and it's valid and it's up to date and it's great. So yeah, if you're not sure how to do it or you need a bit of help, that's what I'd encourage. Go and learn about it, because there's so it would probably come to that point a bit later, so I'll backtrack to what I was going to say there later. So the whole journey there is because one of the things that the Sync Academy makes clear is that all libraries are different. So you can't just write an album of whatever you specialize in and send it out to loads of libraries, because unless you're really, really lucky, it's not going to work. They're not going to listen. It won't fit what they want.
Right.
So some libraries, I mean, it depends on the kind of library you're writing to. I know somebody who does music for like wrestling shows. So it's like the big rap theme, epic walking in, walking out kind of theme music. You can get away with almost writing a perfect track for that, because it is a listening experience in the show.
Sure.
What I'm doing mostly is an underscore in the background, underneath the scene. So it's a completely different thing. It's not, normally you don't want it to distract, it's got to enhance. So there's specific things you have to bear in mind, like not using the frequencies of voice very often. If you know it's going to have speech over it in the show, you've got to avoid that vocal range in your instrumentation. Otherwise it cuts it. And the structure of the track as well, generally, especially maybe not for a specific show, but when you try to write to libraries and sort of get noticed, you'd have to not do it in a song structure. You've got to have a development, and even if it repeats, the repeats have got to build or cut back or be changed slightly. So there's always a variation as you're going across it. Otherwise, they may as well just take those 5 seconds and loop it themselves. They don't need 2 minutes of the same. Sure. So there's all these little tricks like that that you have to learn. And as I said, the libraries that you're writing to need it all presented in different ways. So you have to research the library before you send to them, or they just won't want it.
Yeah. So, do you think sync music, or writing for sync, or that process is really replacing what was happening in the 70s and the 80s for record companies? I mean, it seems like, the record company is the thing of the past, but they did have submission requirements and regulations and whatnot. So, what I've learned, I took Michael Elsner's class. Of course, they're not paying me any money to say that, just like Sync Academy with you. But, with respect to that, you're right. Don't, just send your music out willy-nilly. You have to do your homework. You have to know who you're writing to. You have to know what they want from you. So I won't say there are hoops to jump through, but there is definitely a regimen, and you can't get into it like thinking, okay, this is going to be the next big thing. However, you have been very, blessed with respect to having the placements that you have. Let's take a show like, Say Yes to the Dress. How was it that, did you have an agent that shopped that placement for you, or what was the process that happened?
So I've only just started getting these, well, I'll say just, like the last few months, starting getting these placements after almost a year of working at it. It's not something you can, even if you get in a library, it takes ages to go through the process. So yeah, how that process works is I'm in an American library, hence the American shows. And again, it's all about building that relationship. So the guys that run the sync, I don't know if they call it a sync library, but it's the library. They've actually changed since I've been working with them. It's never an easy explanation. So when I first started writing for them, it was literally a library. So you uploaded into kind of folders of styles. So they might say they needed something sort of romantic and piano based, and you'd put that in the folder called romantic piano, and then somebody would search in their library for a track that fits their show. That's how
the supervisor of the show would search that library. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a TV company looking for a suitable track would go to a library like the one I write for, but there's a lot. So they tend to use, like a TV company might use 2 or 3 different libraries generally, and then because they know that library, there's again relationship between the TV and the and the music library. So the TV person, music supervisor that has been tasked with finding a track to go under this scene, goes to the library and searches in keywords that he thinks they need for that scene. Correct. And it will come up with and you can play short clips rather than having to listen to the whole track. As a producer, you have to present them in various formats and lengths as well, so they're not having to listen to loads of music. You do like little clip bits, and then they'll find one and put it in the show. Hopefully yours, you know.
Right.
So that's how it used to work, but they've now gone more into actually specifically sending out a like a brief. So they have a list of their producers that may be suitable for that task. They will email them and say, by tomorrow, by next week, we need a bunch of tracks that will fit this show. And quite often they'll either give an example, like as a name, like a separate artist, or they may even send a track through that they want it to sound a bit like. So like a reference track.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing more recently. Is I've gone through, partly because I work, again, it's getting to know the people that run the company and giving them what they want, which I've built up over a long time to get to that position where they're now sending me, we need this by, you know, as soon as possible, 2 days time.
Yeah.
It's got to be original, but sound a bit like this. Right. And you get on it and send it in.
Now, let me ask you a question then. With that process, do you have a vault whereby you say, oh, you know, I have something that's close that you can just pull up as a template and go, okay, because in 48 hours, if you need to deliver, I'm sure you're not sitting down, stopping everything that you're doing and starting from scratch. Is that right? So you're in a mode where you're kind of writing all the time because you never know what's going to come in. Is that?
Both, to be honest. What did I have? So the last ones I've had, they suddenly said, oh, we've left it a bit late. We need a load of Christmas tunes. Yeah, late, it's a bit early for that, but yeah. So they needed one, I don't know what the show is, but they said we need a bunch of tracks, and they sent out a list of, so I think they needed 2:30. So the placements in the actual show, there's going to be one track that's selected that's a 30-second clip, 2 that are 15, and then a bunch of sort of short bits in various other parts of the show. So you're sort of competing with people to get those tracks in because they wanted them as soon as possible.
Correct.
In that circumstance, which was actually last week, and not having, I should have done, not having prepared any Christmas stuff already, is I did write the first one. No, I'll tell a lie, sorry, I'll be totally honest. What happened was I didn't have much to do last week. So what you do is exactly what you just said, is write some things, whatever, you know, to put in your own folders. So you go, oh, I'm going to do sort of an orchestral thing, or I'm going to do a synth dark piece or whatever, and you make a library of your own styles in folders. So you know, like you just said, if they want something, you go to your folder, find something similar, and then edit it. Exactly. So that first Christmas tune I'd written was nothing to do with Christmas, but because I'd already got a track almost complete, I thought that could work as a Christmas tune if I put some bells in it, jingle bells, tubular bells, a little bit of harp and some high things, jiggly bits. And they loved it. And that's got sent to the show. So that took me, about a day, because I'd already spent 2 days on the track, which I realised could be adapted. So I saved 2 days' work, really.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. But it doesn't always work. Sometimes you do have to go from scratch. If it's a completely surprise assignment and you've not got anything, you might have to go from scratch. But generally, even then, you know the kind of, you mentioned the word template. So I'm terrible with templates. I have got some, but what I tend to do is when I've got a track I really like and I go, oh, that's a really good track build up for a big film theme orchestral score, then I'll save that not only as the track I've done, but as I'll call it orchestral template, even though it's not really a proper template. It's the basics of, you know, delete all the tracks off it, save it as a template for orchestra, and then you can just jump straight back to that. You've got all of your favorite instruments and probably some EQ and reverb and things all set up, so it's saving you
That's
going completely from scratch.
that's absolutely right. Now, how is it then, Ant, that you are able to, because you're somewhat writing on demand, you don't know when these briefs or these emails are going to come in. How do you divide yourself between, hey, I'm writing just because I feel this, and this is a song that's kind of being downloaded into me, and not because I have to fulfill an obligation? Do you walk a tightrope on that?
I think you have to, for sanity, I do both. Just to keep saying this, so you can. I'm not with the library music. There's times where I've got maybe a week or two or longer where I've got nothing to do specifically.
Correct.
So I try to, as we just said, then put some new material into possible folders that might be used in the future for that kind of thing.
Right.
But every now and then you've also got to stay sane and write something completely to yourself.
Exactly.
So, whatever it is, I mean, I might grab an actual instrument out, which I don't do very often anymore, but sometimes, I've got to pick my guitar up or my violin or whatever, or and actually do something rather than just using the computer.
Yeah.
And I suppose that goes back to what you mentioned, the Dark Villager, which I don't really use now, but that's where I sort of developed my own style of music, and I still sort of go, I need to do a Dark Villager style track, because why not? And it sort of keeps you sane from just having to do, like Christmas tunes in September. Not not a great thing. That's what you got to do.
So, with respect to the library that you use, are you involved in exclusive agreements, or are they all non-exclusive, whereby your tracks can be used in other projects with other libraries? How do you tend to work?
With the one I'm in, I'll tell you, the one I've worked with is Flick Tracks, which is New York. So that's the one I work mostly with, but I do submit. There's one in Wales I've sent things to, and there's another one in England I'm trying to get work used for, and I'm trying to explore film trailer music as well. So there's other things, but mostly it's the Flick Tracks in New York that I write for. So they are kind of borderline. It's non-exclusive, but it is exclusive. So you can send your tracks to them. They've actually changed it slightly recently, which is why I'm hesitating. When you put your tracks in their library, it's non-exclusive. So you can sell them yourself still. You can send them to other libraries. You can do what you like. But the ones that are specifically for TV use that they've requested, I think the clause is if they do get used, then it's an exclusive.
Okay.
They have to take it off other things.
Gotcha. I understand.
Something like that. So it's kind of exclusive, but non-really. So I know some libraries are completely exclusive. If you send the track to them, you can't do anything else with it. It's not that harsh. But it's not completely non-exclusive either. So there is, if they do use it, then you can't use it on another library.
So what's the time then? What's the term? Are they saying that then you can't use it for 2 years? You can't use it for 3 years, 5? What, or they say it's ours. This is our deal, and we're going to pay you for the usage of the track, but you cannot submit this. There's got to be a term though, right? I mean, when they say we'll give it back, we'll give it back to you after the season. If they discontinue the season, I guess if it goes into syndication, that's one thing. But if the show is a wrap, I don't know.
I think from memory, because I'm relatively new at this, and I've been doing this for, being successful at it for less than a year. I've kind of forgotten what the contract was, to be totally honest. I think it was 2 years. I think it was 2 years.
Give us a newbie. Give us a guy who's just walking in the door. But that is good. I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation, because there are more musicians who really are migrating to this, because again, you know, the thing that's called a record label is the funk now. Everybody has their own independent. Everybody's on Spotify or Pandora or wherever they go to make sure that they're getting to their fans. So, you know, this is another outlet whereby if it's good, but there's a degree of freedom in it too. And, you know, where it could be quirky. It could be like, you know, your cut, Silly, that's on YouTube. You know, it could be dramatic and epic like some of your material is. And that's why I wanted to know about who you are as far as what's emanating from inside you, because I've heard some really deep stuff that you posted on YouTube, as well as, okay, this is specifically fulfilling the obligation. Even though you it's very musical and your soul is there, you may say, okay, this is what they've asked for, this is what they get. Because I'm just trying to get the job. You know what I mean?
Like you said, there's in some of the tracks that I've submitted that there's quite a lot of deepness, if I may call it that. So particularly the sort of the soft piano, sad, melodic, melancholy ones. That was for Return to Amish, I think it's called.
Yeah. So
I know they've taken some. I don't know if they've been actually used yet, but they accepted them and got sent to the show. So some of those are actually quite, you know, sort of thoughtful, and there's quite a lot of depth, if I can say that about myself, about how I've written them. They're not just sort of an idea that works. There's a bit of some level of musicality in there, I hope. But yeah, generally, so when you're writing for the show, as you said, you're trying to fulfill a brief. It's got to sound like this. The structure's got to be a certain way. But yeah, so some of the stuff I've done that's not for sync is quite different to that. I think that was part of the reason I ended up calling myself Dark Villager, because I was in a village and the music was quite dark. So yeah, so I went into so it's a lot of. I suppose it's almost all kept. The early stuff was almost. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, how long were you in that place for you to say, okay, I'm going to call myself this? Was it 3 months? Because that's your website. That's your website, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. No, that actually happened. Although I grew up and ended up back in the village, which is not far from here, me and my wife and family lived overseas in the Middle East for 8 years. So that's when I started the Dark Villager thing. I don't know, I suppose it's because we weren't home as well, so it was sort of, I'm actually from the village, and rather than where we worked, so it was a bit of a link to back home, I think.
Wow.
And I suppose some of the dark music came from that as well. I never really thought, it was just a thing that happened. There wasn't that much thought in it, really. No, it certainly wasn't 3 months, probably like 3 minutes.
Well, I tell you, I read something too, which gave me an insight to your personality. I read one briefing about you, and you said billionaire, philanthropist, and there was something else. Billionaire.
Oh, yeah. I was just copying Iron Man on that one. I can't remember what that was on. Is that on my LinkedIn profile or something? I don't know.
I don't know if it was on LinkedIn, but it was just me, you know, kind of checking you out, and I don't know why I can't talk.
I can't remember what that was.
Billionaire philanthropist, and you know, it's like, oh, this dude is like.
I think I missed the Playboy off it because that wasn't right. But yeah, it was a quote from the Iron Man film. But yeah, I can't remember why I did that really. It was just because some of these sites, they ask you for a bio and you just go, oh, what can I put there? Again, it wasn't much thought really. It's just to sound more interesting than you really are.
You sounded very cool. You got my attention. Like, yo,
it was worth it. Yeah.
So let's talk gear a little bit, because Reaper now, is that your main DAW?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
How long have you been?
So when I mentioned when I was doing at school, that was Cubase version 1.0. So that's the first DAW I ever used. I can't remember what we used when we were at uni. I think it was Cubase still, and we had Notator for writing on, and I think we used another one. I can't remember. But in more recent years, so the last 10, 15 years, I suppose, I ended up using Logic for quite a bit. I taught some courses at the college here as well, and we all used Logic. And what else? Reason, a little bit, and Ableton, but that one confused me. I didn't get on with Ableton. So yeah, there was the DJ course, and they tended to use the Ableton, so I crossed into using Ableton a little bit. But so for quite a long time, I was using Cubase, also because I got a Mac at the time. The only real reason I switched from that is because the Mac went wrong, and then I got another Mac, and then they updated the operating system, and it wouldn't run my version of Logic. So that's the reason I ended up getting Reaper, and then you can get it for free. But once I started making music professionally, as you like, I registered it to pay for it so I can use it legally. Yeah. So it gave you that advantage of you can use it without having to invest in it until you get to the point that you've got to be honest and say, yes, I'm actually doing this properly now, so I ought to register it. So,
yeah. Well, I remember the first DAW that I, oh my God, 80, 87, 88, maybe, boy, I'm dating myself here. When you can think in decades, like what decade, you know, but that I really started using was Cakewalk had Pro Audio.
Oh, yes. I missed that one out, yes.
But, you know, the only thing, and God bless them, I know that BandLab has taken over Roland's portion of Cakewalk, and, you know, it's a free program now. But in the early days, one of the major problems that I had with it was I'm a drummer. And so when I'm writing, I do some writing on keyboards and whatnot. I'm more of an electronic musician. But as I'm composing, I don't want the technology to get in my way. And there were so many mouse clicks between what was happening in my head at the moment and what I needed to set and pan and, you know, is this armed and all of that. And then my brother-in-law introduced me to Reason. I think they were at version 3. And that's when life kind of like opened up. I felt like I was born because I can do what I need to do. This is what I hear. Boom, boom, boom. So I've traveled Reason up from version 3 through version 11 Suite, but another dear friend introduced me to Studio 1.5. So I got Studio 1.5 Pro, which interestingly enough, in Reason 11, now it's a plugin. You know, you can use your rack as a plugin, and I can put it into Studio One. So I'm learning Studio One. I'm going through all the videos and whatnot. So this is really hot topic for me. When I just purchased the Abbey Road TG mastering plugin, which you said you had, and I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy about gear. I have the Isotope Ozone, the music production bundle with Ozone. So I want to ask you some questions about how you're using Ozone and what that whole, are you a software gearhead, or are you just like, they're just tools for me? Because I kind of go a little bit overboard. You said 4 plugins and you could name, and I gotta ask you, what's your flow?
I've got so many that I can't name them. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to
so
use
your go-tos, those are the ones, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but your go-tos are the ones that you place. The Abbey Road, the Ozone, you know, the Reaper. What's your flow?
Yeah, so I had Abbey Road first, and I quite like it, and it's got some really good things about it. It's great for colouring the sound, and there's a lot of presets in it as well, and you don't really need to program it much. You can just go through suitable presets. It's like, I can't remember how many there are, but there's more than you need. But it goes through, like, there's different producers have created the presets, and they're quite well named as well. So if you want a big spatial sound,
Right.
it will be named like big wide open space or something. So it's quite good for getting a feel on the track. I did find, I don't know whether it's just my version, but some of them are, the balance is back to front. And it confused me for a bit. So like your left ends up as right and the right is left. And I can work that out. Left, and it's going right. So yeah, I'm not sure whether that's just my version, but some of the presets are actually balanced back to front. But yeah, generally the Abbey Road is good, and I used it on its own for a fair bit, like months. And then I saw a review for Ozone and got that. And so what I tend to do is use Ozone for the dynamic mastering, as it were, to level it out.
Yeah.
So the volume and the general dynamics, I use Ozone, but to get a colouring, I'd use Abbey Road.
Yeah. So
the Ozone's more professional. I mean, there aren't any, like, there's a maximizer in Ozone and there's a dynamics processor, so it can actually make everything even. You can get the level just spot on, and you can see where the peaks are and do a lot more that way in Ozone. Whereas the Abbey Road one's more of a colouring effect, if you like. Changes the EQ and the balance and the depth of things.
So now, do you generally keep with the suggestion that Ozone gives you when it reads the or listens to the piece of music and it says, here's your suggestion? Do you find yourself saying, okay, that's cool, I agree with you? Or do you go in deeper and do more surgery?
Generally, I'd probably end up doing it 3 times to get the one I'm happy with. So not often the first time, because it does depend quite a lot on which bit of the track you tell it to listen to.
Truth. That's true.
So it suggests find the loudest bit, but that doesn't always work. It's also to do with the tonality, the colour of the bit you've chosen.
Yeah.
Because it affects the way it, I don't know, the way it ends up processing the sort of the colouring of it, the dynamic. It's just more than just the dynamics. It changes the EQ across the spectrum somehow as well. So if you choose even if it's a loud bit, the same volume as another bit, it depends what you've actually got in that bit to how it processes it. So I tend to do 2 or 3.
You take 3 sections then, and
I try it 2 or 3 different places of the track to see which one works best. And also, depending on the track that I'm doing, I do the settings slightly differently. Because some of them I do, because you can say low, medium, or high effect.
Right.
It's not effect. I can't think of the word.
Sure.
How much it affects the track.
Yeah,
so low, medium, or high. So sometimes I do low, sometimes I do medium. I don't think I've ever done high. It's just too harsh for, at least for the kind of music I'm doing at the moment. You can hear it working, and I don't want that.
Gotcha. So you use the Abbey Road before in your chain is before Ozone.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't always use it. I'd say I'd use it on maybe, I don't know, 3 out of 10 tracks alongside the Ozone. So I don't always use it. It's if it needs that extra space or a certain tonality to it or colouring, I'd stick the Abbey Road in first and use that to affect the overall track before it goes into Ozone. Yeah.
Well, Waves just had a massive sale. And by the way, as we're talking about these things, they're not paying us, okay, for this.
Yeah.
They could, you know, when this reaches 2 million subscribers, then they will be paying us. But Waves just had a great sale on plugin through which I got the Abbey Road through. And just love isotope stuff now, even the Neutron with mixing. I didn't go to school formally for engineering. Always wanted to be a Quincy Jones type, you know, love the studio environment. So really do know a lot. However, always trying to learn. very organically. And so when Isotope came out with the artificial intelligence, that was right up my alley because it could show me and tell me the analyzers and the spectrograms what I'm missing, what do I need, what suggestions. Helpful. It's like another person in the studio with you, you know. But tell me about the East West. You have that because I'm just new to subscription models. And you have the cloud service from East West for all their instruments. How is that for you?
Yeah, so I subscribed. So that was it was over a year ago, sometime mid late last year, I suppose. So about a year ago, I think. I'm losing track of time. Could have been the year before. Anyway, so it was sort of a year or so ago. I subscribed to that. Because I was having to write music for, I was writing music for TV and specific things. I hadn't got a really good. The main reason I did that is for the orchestral sounds.
I see.
I mean, there's loads of other stuff you can get with your subscription, but the main reason I went to East and West was because for £30, what's that, about $40 or something a month, you get pretty much everything they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really just for the orchestral stuff. It is quite uncoloured. It's very sort of raw sound, so you have to work quite. They've done that deliberately. Gives you more room to play with the sounds of the instruments, but on their own, if you just use them straight as they are, they don't sound great. But it gives you that space to work with the sounds and layer it and put EQ and reverb and effects and what processing you want on top of that. Yeah. And you can get into, some professional composers use it, and it's really good, but you do have to work at getting them realistic. You've got to play with the colouring of it and do some modulation and things in there to make it work. So yeah, I really like East West because it's got so much on it, and you also get it's not just the sounds. It's there's some instruments that come with it as well as Apparillo, which is like sort of is it granular synth? It's like granular. So you got visual blobs on the screen. You can move them around to change all the colours, which is fun. And loads of presets. There's another one that was updated. I can't remember what it was called. There's another synth that came with it. It wasn't Godzilla, but it's some name like that. And it's another sort of sampler synth that's got loads of stuff on it. I use that sometimes. So I don't just use it for orchestral things. I'll tell you another thing it's really good for. They've got a lot of stylized loops in there, particularly the drum loops. Now, sure. I don't have a drum kit and I don't play drums very well, so I tend to try and find realistic samples if I can, or make them myself using the sounds, build them up. But there was one brief I had about a month ago, and they wanted a Public Enemy sound alike. Now, luckily, East and West have a Public Enemy drum sample folder, so I just had to go in there and grab the drum loop that I wanted.
Sure.
So dead easy. But there's loads of things like that in East and West, which makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name. It'll come to me when I'm off camera. But Reason, the drummer, the programmer, is coming to me. But he programmed for Reason, and they have Public Enemy samples as well. And loops, which the way I use loops, I kind of intersperse them. I embed them. Like I just want certain riffs out of them. They're not standouts for me. I try not to build. I guess that's the drummer's elitist in me or whatever. But there's a lot of Public Enemy stuff that's going on underneath, and it's like if you listen, you can hear it. But I want it to be a part of the mix. There was something else I was going to ask you about with respect to classical, because you have Spitfire, and that BBC orchestra is just like, That's why I asked about East West, because that thing, incredible what they did with that orchestra.
And there's another one I need to think of the name of. It'll come back to me in a minute. But yeah, Spitfire Audio for the orchestral sounds.
Yeah.
You've got direct control of the modulation on the screen and the reverb and the volume, but they've coloured it so it's sort of, in a way, the opposite of East West. It's already usable as it is.
Yeah.
You don't need to do much with it.
That's true.
What I've been doing recently is if you mix the two, so you're layering, so if you've got 2 or 3 different string, what am I trying to say? So if you use the East and West one and the Spitfire, and the other one I've got that I can't think of the name of, if you use the instruments from the different libraries together, it gives you a much richer sound, because generally the library processes the sounds all the same way. Correct. So they sound similar within the same library. So if you mix the libraries, you get a much bigger sound.
Wow.
So yeah, Spitfire with East and West is great, put them together.
How much power are you running, Dan? If you're running like multiple libraries, would you share like your computer setup, the CPUs, the RAM?
Yeah, it's not that massive. It's I've just upgraded it recently, so it's 2. So I've had it I think I've had it 3 years now, and it was sort of, wasn't top spec, but it was medium high, what I could afford at the time. It's just a normal Windows 10 PC. So I think it was so it's one of these. It's kind of custom made. So you specify all the specs you want, and they build it to spec.
Yeah.
But it's through a general manufacturer. It's not anything fancy. So it's got a solid state drive, but it's not that big. It's only 500 gig. Sorry, 500 megabyte.
Sure.
Is it megabyte, gigabyte? What am I talking?
It's got to be gigs. It's got to be gig. If you're doing megabyte,
yeah.
you're using Spitfire.
Losing it. Yeah, cool. I've gone back in time there. Yeah.
We're old men.
Oh dear. Right. So yeah, it's got a relatively small solid state drive where Windows runs from, and I'll try and avoid putting too much else on that. So it's just got Windows on it. And then I've got two terabyte external ones.
Yes.
And there's another internal one, which I think it might be 2 again. That's like, it's a normal old school drive in there as well. So I've got 3 drives and a solid state one, and I've got a backup drive that about every couple of weeks I'll copy all the things I've been working on, really. So it's all backed up in case something goes wrong. It was only 16 RAM. It's now 32.
Yeah.
I think it's a 2.8, and it's definitely an octo core.
Yeah, understood.
So that kind of area. It's not the top spec, but it's good enough. Yeah.
That's true. But they're never going to, and they being the manufacturers are never going to let us be satisfied. Never going to, they're always going to up the ante, and something has got to be faster, has got to be stronger, it's got to be more robust, and we keep, climbing. I'm just looking into 4K cameras, and as I'm researching, they're going, well, 8K. You might, gee, I'm just this guy. You know what I mean? But even with the gear, and that's why I was wondering about the subscription models too. Just going back to that for half a second, is the fact that I'm kind of old school, and I want to own my equipment. I bought it. I own this CD. I own this piece of music. I own this piece of gear, what have you. And of course, with the cloud and software, I think that as musicians, it's cool to have everything that they offer. This is not an attack against East West or anybody. Roland is doing it. Other subscription models are available. But, is there ever a point where it's going to come to, we have the choice now, but there's a death of access, like that Juno 106 sound that you love that pad so much. And, well, we can decide to keep it the way it is at the cloud level, or we can tweak it. And that sound that you're going for is not really there because you don't own it. and the manufacturer can constantly doodle with it.
Right,
So
yeah.
with it, it isn't yours, but I'm just paying the monthly fee. I still have questions about it.
Yeah, at the time, and still makes sense. I mean, me is the East West, particularly for me, makes sense to subscribe rather than spending thousands on buying all of those things. So that one works, but I agree with you, and I'm reluctant to subscribe to anything else. I do like to buy them so they're mine and use them. Because there's just, I think when East and West did that, they were one of the first ones that did it. And there's just so many now. It's like everybody's doing it. And
Correct.
if you subscribe to everything, you may as well, that adds up to a lot, and you may as well just buy what you need.
There's a jazz producer that I've worked with. I'll say his name because we've interviewed him here multiple times on the EntreMusician. Bob Baldwin, God bless him, man. And gosh, this is back in 2006, 2007 when I first began working with him. I was kind of surprised at the level of artistry he was, major label at the time, all of the things going for him. But his studio at the time was very antiquated. And he said, look, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these are my go-to instruments. And these have won me these awards, these accolades. I've been charting in the top 20 since, and it's like, I don't need to chase after this, that, or the other. This is my sound. And I thought, man, that's really cool. But like you, I'll see a plug-in and I'll go, huh. I mean, how many reverbs do you really need, right?
There's two sides to it, isn't there? One is if it works, why change it? Why upgrade? If you've got something that works, stick with it.
Exactly.
But also, especially when you're looking at commercial music, trying to get in the charts, sell, even for TV and certainly for film, you've got to be ahead of the game. Correct. So if you've got sounds from last year, it doesn't work. You've got to keep up with
I understand that. So then a subscription model works extremely well.
Yeah,
I got you. That's good.
It's the only one I subscribe to. That's all. The rest I totally agree with you because it doesn't make sense for me either.
Wow.
I've got talking about purchasing and orchestral sounds. So I bought about a month ago Sonia Score, the orchestra, and that is really good. It's sort of, if you take East and West as the raw instrument sounds that you have to then work with, and if you take Spitfire as sort of pretty much you can bung them straight in as they are, this one is like off the scale production, just use it as it is. It's incredible. But again, mix it with the others because it's more of what its strength is sounding like a full orchestra, fully layered from the bass to the piccolo, all done for you. You just play a chord and it's all there. It's got all the rhythms, patterns, you can edit everything. It's just a really useful program.
Yeah.
But you're not going to create a whole track with that. So you still need the individual instruments, the melody parts, the percussion, whatever, with that. So that, with Spitfire, with East and West together, I'm quite happy at the minute. I've found my mix of instruments that works well for me.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, I really appreciate your time, man, that you've spent with us. Your afternoon, my mid-morning, your coffee, mine yet to get coffee. But I wanted to ask you, as you know, on our podcast, we're doing a series entitled The Spirit of Music. And wanted to know your thoughts because I've been interviewing EntreMusicians everywhere who have been giving me different layers of definitions and their perspective on what they feel the spirit of music is. When you hear that, what comes to your mind?
I think it's different for different people. I mean, Yeah, I'm hesitating because I know people that where music isn't. The answer that most people want to hear from a musician is music's part of everybody's life. It's the spirit and the soul of everybody. And there are some people that don't really care about music. Not many, but there are some. So there's always exceptions. Right. But yeah, generally, it doesn't matter what culture, what background, what religion, what race, whatever, what age, pretty much everybody, music is a part of their life.
Yeah.
And, whether it's my son listening to rap or people on TikTok, Spotify, it's fun. It's, it can be either somebody like you and me, it's their life, which is a passion as well, or it just could be a break, it could be the opposite, a complete break from normality, It's a party, it's emotional, I can't answer your question. It's too many levels.
It's too many levels. Well, I'm making it a point, especially probably throughout, the next month. I have some interviews set up, and every conversation I want to ask that question, because in the podcast I'll be splicing out the different answers that different EntreMusicians feel the spirit of music itself is. I personally, I think there's something deeper going on, and you can listen. I won't share it here. You can go into the podcast from the past to hear what I've tried to define the spirit of music is. But I am so incredibly grateful and that you took the opportunity to share your heart with us, share your experience with writing for film and TV, giving us some a look behind the curtain of what happens at music libraries and what they're asking for. Blessings to you on not only the placements that you've received, but as you continue to plot away for more opportunities that I'm sure are going to come. How do you feel people can best get in touch with you, since you are a billionaire and a philanthropist, and you might
all the adventures? Just go to my website. My email's on there.
Yeah,
which is darkvillager.com.
Yes, sir. It is darkvillager.com. And
I'm not really Dark Villager anymore. I'm it's a joke, but that's my website, and I'm not changing it now because I've had it for years. That's what it is.
Understood. We're so grateful for you, folks. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. This was special to me because I'm so happy to be able to hook up with people from many different tiers, doing many different things. We're all out here together. Everyone is trying to make their own sandwich. We're EntreMusicians. We're just full of love, full of life, full of music, and full of whatever that next opportunity is going to be. Anthony Nottingham is one of the greats and doing it, and I'm grateful that we hooked up. That's an EntreMusician. My name is Jere. I'm an EntreMusician, but you know what? So are you. We will see you next time. Peace and blessings.
Thank you so much. Thank you.